I really feel like the rates where they're at right now is kind of a buyer's friend. And in summertime, where it's at right now, being notoriously a bit slower, it's kind of a buyer's friend. Like, use this to your advantage, guys. I know that there's a lot of people that might be sitting the fence waiting for rates come down, but let's take a quick look at what prices are doing. Okay. So now prices, they did dip a little bit in that same November 2022, time frame, October, November, but they're on their way back up. And Ryan, I know that you can speak to this because this is something we talk about all the time with our clients. Like, look, you can refinance that rate once things go down, but are you going to be able, but once the houses increase in price, like, what does that look like when you put pen to paper? Are you actually saving by waiting? And all the while.
Hey y'all, Katie here with Team Evoaz, and welcome to the Arizona Monthly Market Housing Update with Matt and Katie, where you learn all about the greater Phoenix area housing market, including information on interest rates, what's happening with housing prices, and tips and tricks for buyers and sellers. Please like, subscribe, and download our episode so that we can continue to get this real news out to the real people.
Hey everybody, it's Katie and
Matt
and
Ryan. Thanks for including me.
yes. No, we have to. I mean, we've been doing this for what now, like a bazillion years, and you're on every single time, and so you've got to be part of the intro now, Ryan.
Appreciate that. I'm honored.
So let's get started. Talk to us about rates. What's going on?
Yeah, gosh, we're already halfway through the year, so it's a great time to kind of go over at a high level what we've seen with mortgage rates over the past 6 months. And as we've discussed since, the end of last year, mortgage rates were predicted to drop from their highs in November. And, we've seen this drop, but it hasn't been as much as many of those industry leaders have expected. So I wanted really to take some time today to kind of go over why, since we're at the halfway point here. Now, fans of the podcast will know at its basic fundamentals is mortgage rates are tied to inflation. So as inflation goes up, which result we've experienced, we've seen higher prices at the gas pump, at the grocery store,
right.
And rates go up with that. So that was really the story of the rate jump that everybody saw in the news last year and we're really feeling in 2022. So now, as the Federal Reserve has really made borrowing money more expensive with raising their funds rate, and as intended, inflation has seen a drop this year, really, and that's what we expected, and that's why we were all expecting mortgage rates to drop quite a bit. So, with inflation dropping, why haven't we seen that as much? A little bit, but not as much. And there's a few reasons why this happened. Number one, though inflation is lower, it hasn't dropped as fast as we hope, and the main reasons why. Car prices, shelter costs, and gas. They've been dropping, but not as quickly as we were hoping. Mm-hmm. Two, the Federal Reserve hasn't seen inflation drop as fast as we hoped, and they actually may be pausing rate hikes, but still at the same time leaving things open to go higher later this year. Another thing is the debt ceiling agreement. That requires more spending. And that really comes in the form of new treasury, which does pressure rates higher. And fourth, bank liquidity. We saw some big banks fail this year. It was in the news. It was very big. A lot of that has to do with customers taking money out and putting them into new investments like money markets. If you see money markets right now, they're getting 4 to 5% returns right now, pretty high. So this is from the Fed rate hikes. So when this happens, banks need to make more money available, and they do that by selling mortgage bonds. And when they do that, rates go up. So it gets pretty technical, but I just wanted to quickly go over kind of the four things that have really caused a bit of a speed bump in the expected rate drops this year. These are things the market can't predict, which makes predicting the market so hard. But, the trend is lower. It's still there. And, we'll continue to go back to the fundamentals, which we always talk about. Inflation going down, which will continue to pressure rates to drop in the second half of the year. And that's what's predicted right now.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Matt?
Well, I agree. I think it's extremely complex.
It is, yeah.
And it's probably done that way by design, clearly. I know a lot of us have been anticipating, a little bit quicker of, a rate adjustment or drop since we were kind of getting some good news, I felt, on, as far as inflation went. The big question is how are they going to respond? Are they going to respond going down slightly? Are they going to respond by dropping very quickly? And that's the big question. And what is a big drop? What's really going to drive consumers to get their attention? Is it a quarter point? Is it a half a point? And I think everyone's kind of sitting and waiting. The big thing that we're seeing here, though, on our front in Arizona real estate is inventory. It's still dropping. We just went through a little bit of a period here, I'd say over the last 4 to 6 weeks, where I felt like we were pretty stagnant as far as our inventory goes, based on the velocity we were dropping in inventory over the last half a year. So I think ultimately that's going to play a big role. We just passed the 10,000 mark. We are now at 9,000 homes in Maricopa and Pinal County. That's crazy. We haven't seen that number since June of 2022.
Yeah, and it's basically been dropping. If you look at this this report that I pulled directly from Armless, Arizona Regional, MLS, we have been dropping in inventory now since November of 2022. Now, like Ryan always says, things are never in a straight line, right? So we had a little uptick and a down and a little uptick and a little down, but look at where we are at now. Obviously, if you are, we recorded this podcast on June 29th, guys. You're probably going to listen to it in the first week of July, which is when it drops, but we don't have June stats yet on this report. So that's why it's only showing May, but look at this. This is a pretty steep decline from that April 2023 just to May. And I'm feeling it out there. I mean, it's unbelievable how quickly that happened. And our buyers are having, less and less choices out there. We're seeing more and more multiple offers. And, and this is our slow time, right? Like we're coming into July and August, which if you look at a normal year, it's always cyclical, right? We're coming into that slow time, but we're still feeling a bunch of activity. And I really feel like the rates where they're at right now is kind of a buyer's friend. And in summertime, where it's at right now, being notoriously a bit slower, it's kind of a buyer's friend. Like use this to your advantage, guys. I know that there's a lot of people that might be sitting the fence waiting for rates come down, but let's take a quick look at what prices are doing. Okay. So now prices, they did dip a little bit in that same November 2022, time frame, October, November, but they're on their way back up. And Ryan, I know that you can speak to this because this is something we talk about all the time with our clients. Like, look, you can refinance that rate once things go down. But are you going to be able, but once the houses increase in price, like, what does that look like when you put pen to paper? Are you actually saving by waiting? And all the while, are you sitting in a rental while your landlord's kicking that rental payment up? Because that's happening too.
Well, and I think a lot of people ultimately look at, like, sometimes put too much weight on purchasing a home, their primary home, as an investment. And they look at this as, what rates play and what this looks at on this real, like, micro level. And I think the biggest thing that a lot of people end up missing is, like, one of the most important things when purchasing your primary home, which is your home. There's a lot of emotion in that. And that's making sure that you have, the characteristics that you need, the space that you need, the location that you need. And right now, while rates are a little bit higher, you're going to be able to do that as a buyer. The second you wait for rates to drop, it's going to be too late, unfortunately, because of our inventory levels. And we are going to see things dry up very quickly, and we're going to go right back to extreme competition. Well, there'll be a lot less to choose from, and the stuff that you're choosing from, you better get ready to give up everything.
So now, I love that example. So now let's just say that happens, right? Let's just say I'm waiting for rates to go down, and now I'm in the feeding frenzy, which we all know is going to happen here in Phoenix because of the inventory levels once rates go down. So now I'm competing very much so against other buyers, maybe 10 other buyers, 20 other buyers. I mean, shoot, we had sometimes 30 and 40 offers on our listings back in the feeding frenzy days, right? So now you're paying more. Did it really behoove you to wait for that rate to come down even a point when you can refinance, right, Ryan? Like, what is refinance looking like? How expensive is that typically? And does that make sense for somebody that's going to be in their home for 5 years?
Most definitely. Yeah. I'm glad we were kind of going over this because, yeah, FHFA came out with their numbers right now, and they said month over month prices went up 0.7%. And they actually are showing the 2023 pace now to be maybe as high as 7%. So that's why you guys I kind of reflect exactly what you're saying, that the higher rates are your friend right now. Get in, even though rates are high, but refinance later, because on top of rates going down, with prices kind of taking a turn and going back up, that gives you some equity because, the typical price of a refinance is maybe, the closing costs, prepaid items where taxes and homeowners insurance could be anywhere between, $3,000 to $4,000, depending on your loan size. But the good thing about that is you could roll that into your mortgage. You don't have to pay it out of pocket, and you'll have that ability because prices are going back up if you're getting in right now. And on top of that, you get to skip a mortgage payment. So let's just say you refinance in September, you get to actually skip your October payment. November 1st is going to be your first payment. So it usually makes sense to most people if we see a big drop in rates. And also kind of reflecting what you're saying in some of these charts. It's kind of funny because the national pending home sales just came out, and this is a leading indicator of national home housing activity. So this might be a number that you see in the news because it shows a 22% year over year drop in pending home sales. But when people see that, they'll be like, oh, people aren't buying, rates are high, this is a bubble. But as you said, Katie, as you said, Matt, demand is there. Nationally, listings are on average getting 3 offers per house for the past 2 months, and 31% are actually going over asking price. And that's why we're seeing these home prices going up. So if you see that headline, it might make you nervous, but just remember, this all has to do with those inventory figures that you're showing and the steep decline we've seen in that. You can't sell homes if you don't have homes. So that's why we have that 22% drop. So I wanted to kind of, piggyback on that since those numbers just came out today.
That makes a lot of sense. And then circling back real quick to the refinance, am I wrong to think that when equities rise and somebody refinances, say they purchase and they had PMI, they may be able to drop the PMI at the point of refinance?
They can. There's a lot of options. A lot of people know when you have 20% equity in the house and you're doing a conventional refinance, you don't have to have PMI. But there's other options. If you're not quite there, but you have equity in your house, you could sometimes buy it out. You could just pay it in one lump sum, even roll that into your mortgage if you have enough equity in there. So that's another way to do it. And what we have some people do also as equity starts to go up, instead of just paying the straight closing costs, they maybe pay some points, which lowers your rates. It's buy down points. You pay 1%, it might drop your rate 0.5%. So to get a better rate, they have the equity in there to also, get rid of their PMI and possibly even lower their rates lower than what the market is at. So, there's a lot of options when you have that equity in there. So that's why it's a good idea to get in while prices are starting to shift and go back up, because you'll have a lot of options as rate drops throughout the year and into next year as well.
Absolutely. And for those that are renting out there and have never been a homeowner, may not realize that, hey, well, they obviously realize their rent is going up every year, right? But they may not realize that a home purchase is really a hedge against that. And they'll have a more consistent payment. There'll be more consistency in their life, right? With the mortgage. And I think a lot of people forget that.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything else to add, guys?
Well, and just to kind of touch on that, I think our rental market here is another indicator, something that we really put a lot of weight on and look at, because it sometimes is kind of a little glimpse into the future on, what people are comfortable paying for a home, for something to live in. And you can kind of correlate that on what today's rates would set the mortgage at. And with this last year that we've seen so much volatility with rates, with inventory, with home prices, with rent prices, we've seen it going all over. And the last, I'd say 2 months, the rental inventory has been going up, and we're going, that's interesting. and then it stopped. And it actually has now started to go back down over the last 2 weeks. So that really tells me that I feel like where we're at right now with rents is pretty much where people are very comfortable in paying. That being said, it's right aligned with what you'd be paying for a mortgage, roughly.
In some cases,
So
more.
if all of a sudden rates do drop even a quarter point, something small, now all of a sudden, once again, it's going to be cheaper to purchase a home than rent. And I think that's one of the things that then is going to obviously drive up. Inventory will drop, and we're going to see both sides. All of a sudden, rents will go up, and it's just going to stair step. So a lot of big investors are still doubling down on Arizona's rental. There's been some amazing stuff happening here in the state as far as restaurants go too. A lot of new restaurants are moving in, new concepts from other states, restaurant chains that are kind of creating new concepts within Arizona. And we're talking about, big names. And these guys don't think short term, especially when we're coming out of what we were coming out of, like COVID. Everyone had a real good chance to look in the mirror and see how their businesses run and really forecast. And if anyone's going to be nervous about economic times and what's happening in the future, it'd be that industry. Mm-hmm. And it seems like they're saying we're confident based on what they're doing.
Agreed. Moral of the story, if you're a buyer, go out and buy. Yeah?
I agree. Yeah. And just I'm so glad we do this podcast, and these recordings, because as it's called the real, real. It's real news. It's what's happening out there. I'm sure you both kind of run into this as well. We run into a lot of people who are just scared. That they're reading the headlines, some of the clickbait stuff out there that don't really tell the whole story. And when people get kind of scared when they read those kind of things, they put things on hold. They wait. We get a lot of, we're going to wait and see.
Yeah.
And then, we talk to them 6 months later as prices have jumped and rates have went down and there's a buying frenzy. And, there's always that regret, they're like, we should have, and that's what I really wanted to convey, kind of summing some things up is don't wait, don't wait for that to happen. When rates drop and demand goes up, it's going to be kind of crazy out here, and get into a market before that happens.
Totally agree. I know a lot of people,
100%.
Ryan. I know you know this. I don't know anyone, not one person, that has purchased their home in the last 5 years that regrets it.
Yep.
Not one.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's the case. And I think this is also a good message for sellers, because that's the other side of this. I think a lot of sellers are a little bit like, well, what do we do? How do we navigate these type of markets? And seeing what we're seeing, a lot of sellers are going to start saying, this is the time. There's no inventory. We are in a seller's market. We control things, especially when rates drop. And I think the people that are a little bit hesitant in that camp, if you're a buyer and you're deciding to buy, you can kind of pull that trigger and jump off the fence a lot quicker than a seller can. A seller has a lot more things to kind of juggle, whether they're dealing with where are they moving to, what do they need to prep with the home. There's a lot of things. And I just think what they can do is prepare. I think we're at this point that if you are considering selling to buy or do something, it has to happen in the next 24 months. It is such a good idea to be proactive and get all of your ducks in a row right now. Make sure you have all your questions answered. So when all of a sudden opportunity strikes, you know what I mean? You're prepared. And that's what a lot of people, chalk up luck to be. It's when preparation and opportunity meet. And I think that's super important.
Absolutely agree. It's so important to be fully educated, especially in your hyper local area where you are locally focused, because what's going on in Maine may have some resemblance of what's going on here, but it's not going to be the same thing. So what's going on nationwide isn't necessarily Arizona news. Really, really important, guys, to educate yourself. You can check out our YouTube. We have tons of educational shows on there. We have over 1,000 videos. You can literally binge for like weeks at a time. Okay. So hop on over to our YouTube channel. It is at Team Evo AZ. That's our handle. If you more prefer to listen in the headphones, you work out a lot, hike a lot, bike a lot, whatever, hop on over to your favorite podcast platform, do a quick search for Arizona Real Estate Radio, and you will see our channel. Our channel works a bit differently than a lot of other channels out there. We don't have just one topic or just one show that goes through that channel. All of our educational materials, our Tip Tuesday, which Ryan is always on. I was going to say often, but I'm pretty sure you're always on that. Our real estate fitness show, our neighborhood news, just all very, very local, hyper local information that you guys need to know in order to prepare yourself. And maybe you don't plan on buying a home, just not ready yet for a couple of years. Cool, learn now. Maybe you are not planning on selling your home for a couple of years. Cool, learn now. Start following the market. That's when you make the best decisions.
Great way to close, Katie. Love it.
Well, thank you. All right, guys. Until next month. Thank you so much.
Happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th, everyone. Yeah.
Bye.
Take care. Bye, guys.